when a friend introduced me with Rose. So I came to the show through the new era, but I consider myself a fan of the entire show. I have seen every episode, extant episode, several times. So I consider myself a fan of the whole era. And kind of like Kathy, I don't have a favorite doctor, or my favorite doctor changes day to day. If you asked me today, I think I'd say Peter Capaldi, but that may be different tomorrow.
Okay, and I understand we were having some audio problems there. So for those of you who couldn't hear us, we are doing the Power of the Doctor discussion here tonight for Console Room. And we have a great group of panelists here. I'm just going to reintroduce everyone real quick that's talked so far, and then we'll catch Diana again at the end. I'm Michael Zecca, your moderator, and we're talking about not only who we are, but when we came into the show and who our doctor is. I came in with Nightmare of Eden in season 17, and my favorite doctor is Colin Baker. And then Kathy?
I'm Kathryn Sullivan. I started with Doctoring the Daleks with Peter Cushing, and was introduced with The Brain of Morbius. And I was one of the group that actually started pestering PBS in St. Paul to start showing the Doctor.
And Eleanor, if you could go again.
Hi, I am Eleanor. I have been a fan of the show since 2005 with the reboot. I was like 7 at the time. So my first episode was Rose, with the 9th Doctor and Rose. But my doctor was probably 10. But still, my favorite doctor is now 13. So it keeps going back and forth between these two. I love them both.
And Marcia?
Again, I'm Marcia Franklin. I started watching in 2008 from Rose. I have watched the entire run from William Hartnell on several times, and I consider myself a fan of the entire run of the show. My favorite doctor changes day to day. If you asked me today, I think I'd say Capaldi, but.
And Diana?
I'm Diana. I started when I was young with my uncle making me watch it on PBS. So of course, I don't even know the age. I don't remember my episodes. I just know I liked it. Then when the reboot came, I didn't even know about it. My uncle was like, I'm watching him, and I was living with him, and he's like, "What are you watching?" He's like, "I'm Doctor Who," and I'm like, "What?" It was a Tenet, so of course I was hooked again. Favorite contemporaries, Tenet, but I love Pertwee for classic.
All right, so we're talking about Power of the Doctor tonight, which was the closure of Jodie Whittaker's run as the Doctor, Chris Chibnall's run as producer, Zecca Akinola's run as composer, but also part of the BBC centenary celebration, celebrating 100 years of BBC as a radio and television broadcasting network. There's obviously a bit of nostalgia work into this episode for a variety of reasons there. Starting with the panelists, what are your first impressions of this episode?
My overall first impression was that I loved it. It was end-to-end fan service, and I was happy to be catered to. There were a couple things once I stopped and thought about it, I'm like, I don't know, but I'm not looking at the wizard behind the curtain because I enjoyed it so much.
Anybody else? Kathy?
I enjoyed it a lot too, because I gave it a lot of leeway because it was an anniversary celebration. It was the master's plan, and the master's plan are always weird. But the emotions, the way that characters were wrapped up, the character development along, I just enjoyed it a lot.
I loved it. I just watching it beginning to end, just enjoying it so much. And yeah, there are some things that make no sense. And there's I could go on a long, long list of, well, this shouldn't work and that doesn't work. And this, but I don't care. I still liked it. And I still think the parts that really matter, they got it right. Pretty much.
So I liked it a lot, but I liked it because of, like Marcia said, the fan service. I like the nostalgia part of it, but it was a typical Chibnall plot all over the place kind of episode. And I was in it for Ace and Tegan.
Right. So given that Ace and Tegan were promoted ahead of time as being in this and were in the opening credits, how well do you think their storylines were handled in the story?
I wish they used Tegan a little bit more.
But I like the fact that they did it a lot better than what they did with Sarah Jane in the school reunion, because that didn't seem like Sarah's backstory. But actually have Tegan have several husbands, adopted son that she hasn't heard from, and she's been doing this and almost drowned here. It's like, great backstory. She's been doing things.
I also really appreciated that they gave both of those characters some closure that they didn't have on screen in the classic era. That was really important to me.
I didn't get to, oh wait, did Diana go yet? Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I have not actually seen any episodes with Ace or Tegan. I've seen the clips of I need to get to Heathrow and beating up the Dalek with the baseball bat and that quote about, I suppose you didn't break my rules and bring some nitronine, did you? I'm glad we got to see her blow stuff up and smash a Dalek with the baseball bat. And I liked that Tegan, I feel like a lot of the New Who companions have to be doing a lot more action-y type stuff. Tegan got to be cool without having to blow anything up or beat anybody up. She got to do some important work, climbing down a shaft and doing complicated electrical wiring. She played a role in saving the day, and she didn't just have to, I guess that's actually true of several Doctor Who companions. They don't have to be physical, but a lot of heroes these days do. So I appreciate that she could be tough without having to be violent.
But she got to fire a gun. Both of them were firing guns.
My bad. They both fired guns.
But the fact that Tegan was able to be the one who saved Kate, that was perfect.
Yes, that was cool.
I'm glad that Janet and Tegan have lost none of their feistiness too.
Definitely.
I was an airline hostess, and compared to that, a building full of Cybermen is nothing. I love that line.
Why, yes, I would like to go into the TARDIS again. Thank you.
Like her. I need to watch an episode with her.
She's feisty.
And again, like you said, the closure of both of them being able to talk to their version of the Doctor and having the Fifth Doctor say, I never forgot you and I missed you. Like, that was great.
And acknowledge something that he didn't seem to acknowledge at the time, that yes, he also missed Adric. Yes, he was shaken by that death. And at the time, Tegan thought that he was just brushing it off. But having him say to her outright, yes, I miss Adric, was very important as well.
Does it count the same way though? Go ahead.
Oh no, it's like I cried. I cried when they got to say their goodbyes to their doctor. And even with Adric mentioned, it's like, oh, but yeah. It's Adric.
Does it count as the Doctor making amends if she herself didn't say anything? Are the AI's holograms part of her or independent? Is she going to remember those conversations later?
It's an interesting point.
I think so. Because
Hope so.
I think so because of the way the whole she planned it. She made sure it happened. And even when we had Joe Martin, I mean, it was like she knew that was kind of happening. So I think that she knew because they were part of her.
Because otherwise, the line that Joe Martin said wouldn't have made sense. The rubbish schoolboy prank, and you were a rubbish schoolboy. It's like, how would Joe know that?
Because they were made by her ahead of time, but she didn't know that she'd been killed forced regeneration by the master. So the AI hologram it wasn't directly connected to her consciousness. It was something like a copy of herself she made ahead of time.
Mhm.
So does she reintegrate herself with that AI later to learn everything it did or not? And does that even matter? We still got those moments. I don't know, I'm just asking questions.
I think it depends on the viewer's interpretation. I think there is every reason to think that she could do that if she wanted to, if she thought of it, if her next incarnation or two thinks of it. I don't see any reason why it couldn't, but then again, I doubt we'll ever see any mention of it on screen. So
Big Finish audios.
I like that we got to see the other doctors, especially the ones that weren't in the last special.
yes.
And I think that may have been somewhat intentional.
Yeah.
Making sure they got play in there since they weren't.
Baker was out because of health reasons.
There was also an interview this week where Tom suggested that his experience filming the Day of the Doctor was not the most fun, and he may have held back for that reason as well.
Mm. But still, it was, I mean, when we first saw the first Doctor, it's like, oh, I wasn't crying during the episode, but it was more like, oh, times. And seeing them all
Yeah.
suddenly appear. And of course, the eighth Doctor's not going to wear the robes.
Yes.
I liked
It
that.
was nice to see Colin Baker back, you know, because we all know his experience wasn't the best.
I have to say though, knowing Chris Chibnall's fandom in his teens, you know, he was very much involved as a fan in his teens during the Colin Baker era. There's interviews online. I'm actually surprised he didn't try to put Michael Jaston into that as well. He was the Valeyard in the Colin Baker era, kind of an evil version of the Doctor, but I could have seen that in the Doctor's headspace because that is part of the Doctor.
I'm missing the context.
Yeah, you'd have to go back to the Colin era to see this, but there was
But that was
basically
something the Time Lords manufactured. So
Right.
it's like,
but it's manufactured out of things deep inside the Doctor, and if you're in the Doctor's headspace, you'd think those things would be there. So I'm just,
well, if he was
I'm-
going to do that, then he could have brought all these other future Doctors
oh yeah,
that were erased. And I'm glad he just left those out.
yeah. And that is telling they did leave out the modern Doctors from that sequence, and how do we feel about that? And do you think it was a good idea?
Well, we've got the anniversary special for the Doctor coming up. So because it's a centenarial of the BBC, I'm glad they focused on the classic. I mean, we did have elements of that in the Master's outfit because we had the tendon tie,
And Sylvester McCoy's sweater,
but that
and
was not
the
allowed in the Doctor.
celery stalk as well.
Why did nobody say, why are you wearing a vegetable?
Diana.
So like I know, like we know Christopher Eccleston and his
Well,
video thing. Tennant was going to be in the end. Capaldi has stated in interviews he's done. He won't return as the Doctor for anything. So that's probably part of it as well.
and Matt Smith's busy making movies and TV shows all over the place.
Exactly. Yeah, that's that. And then he's busy.
That being said, from what I've seen of Capaldi's interviews, I think he has made it clear he doesn't want to come back and do a bunch of stuff the way David Tennant is going to potentially be doing this next year. But I wouldn't put it past him appearing in an anniversary special if it was done right. And he was asked, and it worked for him. But I think, honestly, I think they were maybe leaving the future Doctors out because of the anniversary, as you say, and also because they didn't want to tip their hand on what they were doing with David later in the story.
That and yeah, and it's a centennial and the classic. I love the
Oh, yeah,
callbacks to
absolutely.
the classic.
Yeah.
I really liked the companion support group at the end. Some people say Graham invented it. I'm not sure. I think you can interpret it either way, but everyone sitting around and talking about it. This is long overdue.
Yeah, but it started off with Graham. Started with him being in a support group for cancer survivors.
True.
So because he's already familiar with support groups, he's the perfect one to launch this.
Maybe. But they already were connecting amongst themselves, like Ace
Were
and
they?
Tegan.
Well,
I'm-
Ace and Tegan obviously had been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
And we know
maybe-
that. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, and then we know that Joe and
Sarah
Ace for
Jane.
sure had been in contact with Sarah Jane.
Mhm.
It was great to see Ian.
I
Yeah.
cried.
Oh God, I choked up when Ian
I am
popped up.
so glad we had one from the very beginning. I didn't think that was possible. I didn't know any of them were still around.
97
still
years
there.
old, still looking good.
He broke the
Annika's
Guinness
still
World Record,
around.
though.
Maybe that's why they had an empty chair, because Annika was there. Could have been there. Annika
Yes,
was Polly.
Yeah, surprised she wasn't.
Yeah.
I noticed as well that when Kate Stewart in that group said something about I may recruit some of you to do some work for me, there was a very knowing laugh from Joe Grant. Joe Jones.
And we know Ace had to have been working with her to be able to stash everything.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yes. So maybe they were in contact with each other ahead of time, but Graham doing the support group, that was his idea. Hey, we also need to talk about this. That's important.
Mhm.
And it was just good to see him again. I liked him.
How do we feel about how Dan's departure was handled so early in the episode? And does his arc look good? Did he have a good closure to what he was doing?
I thought he had a good closure. I mean, that was when he actually looked at the helmet. I'm still surprised he was alive with the hole in the helmet. And actually knowing how close he came to death at that point. And he was still trying to get back to die. So actually, that was a good point for him to step away and to have it early instead of having the whole episode suddenly turn into about him instead of the doctor. I think it was just a good way to write him out at that point.
I liked that he had agency. A lot of companions don't have real agency in choosing when they leave the TARDIS. And I appreciate that he had his last hurrah. He said, you know what? My life back on Earth is really important to me. And I think I just won Russian roulette. I'm taking my chips and cashing out. So I appreciated that. And again, there was so much else going on in the episode. I'm glad that they got that farewell done early. Let the rest breathe.
So looks like Ben posted a question about Mel.
Yep, I was going to pop in with that. So Melanie Bush was there in the support group, played by Bonnie Langford, and Ben asked if anyone's curious how she managed to come back to Earth to be there for this.
She
Last-
had decades to figure it away.
Last we saw her, she was leaving Ice World on the Nosferatu 2 with Sabulum Glitz.
But we also had an introduction to her on one of the Blu-rays
Mhm.
of her interviewing people. So I'm assuming that was on Earth.
Well, I actually rewatched Dragonfire recently, and in that departure scene, the talk was that Glitz was going to be taking Mel and possibly Ace back to Earth, just the long way around.
Mhm.
And the Mel's the one that suggests that Ace should travel with the Doctor instead, get to Perryville by a more interesting route.
Yeah, but again, the Blu-ray with her interviewing people for a job or something,
Yeah.
it seemed to be set on Earth.
Yeah.
So that's probably
Yeah.
how she got back to Earth.
Yeah, she clearly had gotten back at some point. Yeah.
Decades, she made it.
All right.
One thing about Dan's departure,
Mhm.
I agree with Kathy that yes, they planted the moment, it made sense. And I agree with Marcia, definitely. I like that we're getting companions who walk away. The Chibnall era is ones who walk away, as opposed to the Moffat era where they die, or the RTD era where they get left behind. But I think there should have been a little more between Dan and Yaz. They spent 3 years together without the Doctor in the early 1900s, trying to find clues. They got really close. They've got that buddy camaraderie, Sheffield, Liverpool teasing. And at the end, they just get a little bit of dialogue, and he says, "I'll call you," and she says, "I'll ghost you." And it's like, I mean, yeah, maybe she was joking, but but maybe that's just me. I would have liked a little more. Oh, you're right, Martha. You're right. Martha. Martha is awesome. You were right.
I will say in regard to Dan's departure, I like how it was handled, but I think this is where our lack of full season this year and our lack of a longer season with the flux last year, I think Dan's storyline got cut a bit short. And I think this departure would have meant more if it had happened in the previous episode. And then he comes back at the end with the support group. It worked okay as it was, but if there had been like a full season this year leading up to this, I think he would have departed in the previous story.
But would he?
We needed to have him there to actually know with the rescue of the train. And when we saw that little girl, I was worried that it was a timeless child and
Me
she was
too.
rescuing herself.
I'm glad that they left that timeline alone. It wasn't really fully 100% properly wrapped up, but I'm glad, because I was actually getting kind of tired of it. I don't believe the master at all, but also I've just stopped caring. Could we not mess with the doctor's past anymore and just focus on not retconning everything?
Oh,
Just
my
Diana.
opinion with Dan was I was so happy he was gone. I never liked him. He was never fully developed, and I found the actor I didn't like the actor.
oh.
So I was kind of happy he was gone for most of the episode.
It was nice to get a Yaz and the doctor being the only ones in the TARDIS. I mean, until Tegan finally bowled her way back in. But yeah, it was nice to have the two of them be the team.
Yeah.
Did Vendor serve a purpose for the plot in this story?
Not really.
Well,
Kid.
the trouble is, again, I had to listen 3 times to actually hear him saying that he was on the track of that little girl, the quarter.
Quarrels.
Because the first couple of times, like, he's hunting the quarries? That doesn't make sense. It's like, oh, the quorum. Okay. So it is linking up, and the fact that he's the one who would have no hesitation on shooting the master.
Okay, that's fair. Ace would
Much
have
as yes, as she said, weapons training, she was going to hesitate.
Ace would have shot him. Would
Yeah.
she?
Well, she would have hit him over the head with a baseball bat.
Oh, fair.
Yeah.
But I feel like they underused him. They brought him back just to bring him back and just to have these loose ends. But at the very end, everybody else is contributing to saving the day, and he just leaves. I mean, yeah, he had to get back home, but if he was sent on a mission to find the Quarunks, he's left without the Quarunks. Has he actually completed his mission? Is he going to get in trouble? Like, although I'm glad we got to see the doctor fixing his ship. We got to see her in mechanic mode one last time.
Never in the goggles.
Yeah.
I think that was the modern era fan service. I mean, part of the modern era fan service. We've been talking a lot about the classic era fan service, but there was plenty of modern era fan service too. And I think that was one piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I think Graham and Vendor both were kind of shoehorned into the plot as part of the Chibnall era fan service.
But I did love when Graham met Ace
Absolutely.
in the volcano. I was like,
That was awesome.
I'm Ace. Yes, you are. Yeah, that's perfect.
The psychic paper, which didn't work, and she's reading it and vaguely concerned about these dogs and what he's going to do about them. I can't get the hang of it.
Yes. Oh, just perfect.
I wish we could have seen Ryan. It's not fair that Graham got to be there and Ryan didn't, but at least they mentioned him. Oh, he's busy doing stuff somewhere else. Or maybe he was just in the wrong volcano. They each picked a volcano to investigate, and Ryan picked the wrong one.
Patagonia. Yes.
There are volcanoes in Patagonia?
Well,
There's
according to
volcanoes all
Ryan,
over
I
the world.
guess.
Well, I'm guessing as far as Ryan goes, that the actor was just busy and unavailable.
Yeah.
So elephant in the room.
Hmm.
13/Yaz and the end with that. Or should I have not said that?
Oh no, nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing to go. You've had this potential relationship developing between the two. How did that play out? Did it get the proper service or did it not?
I did like the fact that she went out and rescued the doctor. Actually carrying the doctor in. That was just perfect. And Mandipus, her emotions, she was just so great on some of her line deliveries. Like, she knew that the characters cared.
How do you think Yaz was handling meeting Tegan and Ace? There seemed to be something going on there.
My opinion on that was the fact that, like, so she just kind of had that look, but they didn't address it. They didn't even go anything further after that look. Whereas in School Reunion, Rose got very jealous,
Mhm.
you know, but it was like, oh, okay, whatever. I don't know. There's the shock. And then there's like, okay, well, doctor's pulling me off this way. And now Tegan's mad because she's not getting to go.
But she had a chance when Berman's character, when Jack Harkness, came. So she already had the experience of other people who travel with the doctor.
But they're also female, where she may have felt a little bit of a, they don't always remember that she wasn't always a she.
Mhm.
So
Or maybe it's the fact that Jack seemed like an old friend, whereas Tegan and Ace, she left them behind and she might have been kind of mad at the doctor. So these people, in the way you said, we used to be you. The dynamic of replacement, and do you really do that to your companions? You just abandon them or leave them behind and never talk to them again, at least because Jack and 13 were on pretty good terms, even though he also got abandoned, quite literally left for dead on Satellite 5.
well, he was actually thought was dead for the most part.
Well,
to the end. Till the end. But yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the Yaz 13 relationship.
I
Well, that
haven't
played
seen
out.
it yet.
But let's just talk about Yaz for a moment. Do we feel like, this was her departure story. Do we feel like her storyline was wrapped up well and that she was well served?
I think that yes, from that moment where we used to be you, something kind of clicked, and I'm not the first one to come up with this idea or present it, but I think that was the moment when she started to pull away from the doctor. And if you watch, you can see how there are other moments throughout where she's like, and I'm taking another step back, and I'm taking another step back, because I think she knows that she can't stay forever either. And it's probably not healthy for her to stay with the doctor for a long time. And so she's, making her own steps to separate herself. So in that sense, I think, yeah, she was fairly well served. And again, she pretty much got to leave on her own terms.
Anybody else?
Well, the fact that she actually has stalled in one of the rondels a book with post-it notes on how to fly the TARDIS that Ace was really admiring, and the master was basically going, oh, look at these. The fact that she's actually traveled long enough to know how to pilot the TARDIS, she's learned
By herself.
outer travels.
Mhm.
But-
By herself, she said.
So no index file for her. That's a Tegan reference, by the way.
Did you have anything you wanted to add, Diana?
No, I do these all the time, Eleanor. I'm
Okay,
kind
well-
of making sure everybody else gets a turn too.
I tend to dominate conversations, so I didn't want to talk too much because Yaz is my all-time favorite companion, and I liked the moment when the doctor's rushing about and Yaz is asking for explanations, and the doctor says there's no time, and she steps up and says, make time. Because I noticed in season 11, the doctor was paying a lot more attention to her companions, listening to them, talking to them, explaining how a matter-antimatter drive works to Yaz like an equal. And then in 12, she's shut off. She's not answering questions. She's avoiding things. She's hiding things. And that carries on to season 13. Ever since the stuff with the Master and the Timeless Child and Gallifreyan and all of that, she's closed off. And Yaz is saying, I'm not putting up with that anymore. We've traveled together. I deserve an explanation. You need to trust me. And
and that is consistent with the way they've been developing Yaz across the last few seasons as well. She was tolerating less of it during the flux.
Mhm.
And even late season 12, she's starting to call the doctor on her BS more.
And it's certainly a nice change from the various RTD and Moffat era companions who are just like, oh, technobabble. I just nod when he pauses for breath. Like, no, she listens. And she gets to fly the TARDIS herself. And it's just so cool.
Another thing I noticed about Yaz here was that certain shippers would be happy because she essentially got to play the Master's companion. I've heard other people talk about how, wouldn't Yaz be an interesting companion with the Master? You can almost see that in the, when they met in the Outback or whatever, there was a little chemistry there where you can see the Master like kind of working on Yaz. You can envision that he would find a way to convince her to come travel with him because it would be cool. There are people out there who are behind that. At any rate, those people should have been happy with the Master Doctor traveling with Yaz, because you kind of get a little bit of that in there. So Eleanor's looking horrified.
I haven't read all the fan theories.
How do we feel about the Master as Rasputin?
He does have some weird ideas, doesn't he? I was not one of those people who liked to dance. I was one of those people who's, when the Cybermen and the Dalek were looking at each other when he was doing the dance, like, yep, I'm with you.
I love the part, the Cybermen and the Dalek, they're like, what? And I'm like, clearly your musical taste hasn't improved since your last regeneration. Sorry.
I had a discussion about that. We had that. It was more of like, they had it be at the Winter Palace and like that, and him Rasputin just so he could play the song. Because it could have been anywhere at any time.
Yes. The Master, ingested the Cyberium so he could figure everything out. And he's like, yes, if I do this, I get to play this song while the Doctor's in my clutches.
Well, I've got to say that as far as the musical thing, that's very much a callback to the Russell T Davies era, because John Sim did this as the Master, but we also had Britney Spears' Toxic in The End of the World.
Oh, God.
Second episode of the new series. So this was another of those moments in this thing. It felt like Chris Chibnall was emulating Russell T Davies a lot in the character pieces in this story, more so than he usually does. But I guess for me, it's like the idea of the Master being Rasputin, and not even just masquerading as Rasputin, but just being the historical Rasputin, actually kind of vibes with the sort of thing I would have felt like Roger Delgado might have done.
My problem is because Tom Baker had played Rasputin in Nicholas and Alexandria. That's what I was latching on to. It's like, that's the Master. That doesn't make any sense.
Like he's showing off all the time. He's doing a bunch of dumb stuff. There were so many different, like, we have all this stuff in the Winter Palace and he's messing with the royal family, and there's this ominous stuff about the child that's going to die, or only he's not, he's like hemophiliac, and that didn't go anywhere. Yeah. It's like the doll and the paintings and the seismologist, all these things are just little clues just to get the Doctor's attention. And he didn't need all of them. He could have just done one or two things, especially since the Doctor literally saw Cybermasters, so she already knew the Master was involved.
But since when have the Master's plans made any sense?
quickly.
Yeah, I know.
Likewise, since when has the Master not wanted to show off for the Doctor
Exactly.
to
It's
get his
just so
attention? He's been
typical
doing
Master.
that since season 8, and I mean classic season 8. I always got the vibe. I know that back in the day, Barry Letts and crew had sort of envisioned the Master as the Doctor's brother, and they were going to have a big finale between Pertwee and Delgado that didn't happen because of Roger Delgado's death. But you know, I always felt like he kind of does have that little brother vibe, always trying to get his big brother's attention and just not getting it, and doing it in the wrong ways.
Well, yeah, taking over the Doctor's body altogether is like, well, that's the wrong way about it to get your attention.
Even just slapping his face on all these classic pieces of artwork just to get the Doctor's attention. It's a silly, dumb thing, but it's the sort of thing you do to get someone's attention.
Calling card.
I still don't understand how the regeneration thing worked. Like, okay, did he do a mind swap? Or because he was in her body, but he looked like himself. And yes, didn't even double check to see, is the other person in the other chamber dead? And nobody checked to make sure the Master was dead when they left. Amateur move.
Binder was looking at him. Binder was double checking, and he got distracted.
Did nobody think?
Tegan would have checked.
Forced regeneration, Eleanor, it's really complicated.
Well, I mean, because in the past, it was how Troughton turned into Pertwee.
Yeah,
right.
I knew that. But he just regenerated, like
Yeah.
one body turned into another, not transplanting to another place.
And it could have been a punishment among the Time Lords because the Time Lords had limited regenerations.
Yeah, no,
So this was how the Master originally was trying to take over other people's bodies. But in this episode, it's like, I don't understand.
Well, and not only that, but you know, the Master makes a big point in this story about forced regeneration being the worst punishment given out by the Time Lords. It's not, is it?
Can't they like turn people human and leave them to live out a mortal life and die? I mean, you'd think to immortal beings that would be the worst.
Well, and also, I mean, Kathy, Diana, you've got to be able to think of times when they've done worse things. What do they do to the war chief? Back in the war games, they can erase people's existence from ever having existed in the timeline.
Mhm.
Yeah, they completely put in a different time loop.
Forced regeneration is a punishment, absolutely, but it's not the worst thing they can dish out.
Another
I
case
know from history that Time Lords can control their regenerations if they want. Doctor just doesn't do it very well.
Well, and the Doctor's usually regenerating under a lot of stress.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You know, when Romana regenerated, she was regenerating by choice, so she had a lot of control over it.
Yeah.
The Doctor's usually been poisoned, dropped off a radio telescope, you know, whatever. It's not a time where you really have a lot of time and energy to put into what your next body's going to look like.
How do people feel about how she regenerated? Because we've had several recently where the Doctor sacrifices themselves for a companion, but we didn't get that this time.
No, she got hit by that blast from the
Yeah.
quorum. But it took a little while for it actually to take effect. So it was delivered by the Master. So yeah, she was kind of murdered. But if you mean that, are we going to get the spoiler at the end?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you're
Okay.
watching this, you've
Yeah.
seen
I mean,
the
this
episode, and
whole
if not,
idea
you
of-
shouldn't be.
This new body and the clothes. So I'm expecting when we actually get the new season, there's an explanation as to why the clothes regenerated too.
But there's
Oh, that's why I
precedent
keep
for that,
thinking it's
too.
going to be a little wonky. Pardon?
There is some precedence with the clothes regenerating as well. It's not like a whole outfit, but I believe it was shoes or some socks and some other things
yeah.
in classic
Tom
era.
Baker's boots.
Actually, there is a precedent, goes further back. Stephen Moffat apparently wrote about this at one point. William Hartnell regenerated Patrick Troughton and was in different clothing.
Okay.
And then Patrick Troughton was forced regenerated into Pertwee, and he falls out of the TARDIS in Troughton's clothing, and then it's presumably cut off in the hospital or whatever, and then he's wearing like a hospital gown. And Moffat apparently has written this horrible thing about what if they were actually cutting off bits of his skin, essentially. So yeah.
Marcia, would you like to say something?
Real quick, we got some comments from the audience related to this. So someone said the doctor's clothes have were generated before first to second and fourth to fifth boots to shoes. Okay, there we go. Okay, go ahead, Marcia.
I was just going back to the audience comment about Ace, actually.
Sure.
And I had thought to bring that up earlier, but we pivoted to Yaz. But one of the things that I appreciated when we got the we used to be you moment, but right before that, when the doctor re-meets Tegan and Ace, Ace's reaction was one of the most important parts of the show for me. Was like, whoa, and it's a good look on you, Professor, which not directly except directly points to Ace's coded queer identity, because she was famous for, picking up her own companions, and there were usually other pretty girls.
Well, those are up to boys too. So
yes, she also did pick up a few pretty boys. So the fact that she and Graham kind of sort of had eyes at each other, I think doesn't do anything to diminish the role of Ace as a potential queer icon, because bisexual people are real. and Ace can both flirt with girls and with boys, and it's all perfectly queer. And I love that they put in that queer moment for her to openly appreciate the doctor's new regeneration.
Yeah.
So
and I don't necessarily see a strong romantic thing between Ace and Graham. It seemed like playful flirting. It wasn't
But it was
necessarily
flirting.
intended to
Yeah.
go anywhere. Ace just does that with people sometimes anyway, just to mess with them. We've seen that before.
oh yeah.
yeah,
I wish we could have got a little bit more. I don't like Tegan mentioned that she had 2 ex-husbands. Ace could have mentioned having a girlfriend, not necessarily being in a committed relationship or being with someone at the moment, but some verbal, explicit, yes, I am not straight would have been nice, because we are in the 21st century now. We can say stuff like that on TV. But yes, I'm really glad we got that.
and
Yeah,
I
because
would,
was there any callback to her book, the book that she wrote where Ace met the 13th Doctor? Because I don't quite recall, because I kept thinking that,
Childhood's End you're talking about.
yeah. And basically her charitable organization too.
I haven't
Charitable-
read it, so
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't read it either, although Charitable Earth certainly was name checked in the trailer that she did.
Okay, good.
Blu-ray set, right?
That's the Blu-ray set. Yeah.
So, yeah. So if we consider that canon, then yeah. Okay.
there was another question back here about would you want to see a spinoff with Tegan and Ace like the Sarah Jane Adventures? And yes, go God, yes, please.
Yes.
Give it to me. Give me all the grabby hands. Yes.
Well,
So
in
we
fact,
don't have Torchwood anymore, and we don't have Sarah Jane anymore. It's Ace and Tegan.
And we have the support group, so let's
Yeah.
bring the support group in with
Yeah.
Kate.
and maybe that support group will come into play that way in the next era. We have no idea.
That would be so
Um,
awesome.
Wasn't Ace supposed to appear in Sarah Jane
She was.
Adventures soon after it actually wrapped? I mean,
Mhm.
I think she was in the plans to appear
Yeah.
there. Also mentioning Torchwood, if you do the Big Finish audios, there was a recent Torchwood audio featuring Ace and Mr. Colchester from Torchwood working together.
Mm.
It's rather nicely done. And the Charitable Earth is name checked in there quite a bit too.
I haven't seen anything past season 1 of Torchwood.
Yeah, Mr. Colchester was introduced on audio in what essentially is like season 5 or 6.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Check the YouTube chat if it'll let me.
Has Yaz really left? because it
Mm.
seemed to me like they were just taking a little break, but not like a proper goodbye. And
Well-
I didn't hear an announcement that she was leaving, but at the same time, hey, at least she's not being left behind. She's walking away. So, I mean, do we
But she's-
think she's left?
Yes, I think she's left. She basically said, let's not say goodbye. But the way she basically, when Ace was asking her, do you think she's okay? And of course she's okay. She's the doctor. It did not sound like she was going to go back.
I didn't get. I'm with Kathy. I did not get that feeling at all. And usually when they do change showrunners, those companions are pretty much done.
Well, it wasn't there that in that interaction between Tegan and Ace, like comment of, she thinks she's okay. And I think there was more about, I think Yaz is okay.
No, that started off with
Yeah.
Tegan asking her if she was
Yeah.
okay. And then Ace was
Yeah,
asking her
okay.
if you think she's okay, meaning the
Mhm.
doctor.
Right.
But we never got any sign that Yaz wanted to leave. It wasn't like
Never
with Graham and Ryan and Dan where there was a little hint and a reason and I'm leaving now. It was
The doctor's saying, I need to do this next part alone.
yeah,
Mhm.
as
So
in just
she doesn't
generating.
leave.
There wasn't any. I feel
And
like
yet, Yaz kind of went along with it. I think she understood this was it between them.
but what if she's coming? I kind of felt like there was the expectation that the doctor would come back.
I did not get that.
I think the support group shows her that that's not the case.
Otherwise, there was no point to the support group for her, really.
Well, and they said
And you'll
it
notice
was
that the
not.
doctor specifically left her outside the support group
Yeah,
because she knew she'd need it.
but doesn't she deserve better? Doesn't
Don't they all?
Don't they all?
But she's learned her lesson by now, the doctor. She knows you don't just leave people, you talk about it. And if they say, yeah, I'm okay with leaving now, then they didn't actually say, yes, I need to take a break for a while, or yes, I'm leaving for good. She said, I don't want it to end. And she said, let's not say goodbye. So unless there's a lot of subtext that I'm not picking up on, it was not clear at all that this is actually a leaving the TARDIS moment. But I'm terrible at picking up the subtext, so. Okay, you're right.
So the regeneration itself, what was good and what was bad and what was different about this compared to, say, the last few?
She
Did
didn't
this one
destroy
work
the
for you?
TARDIS. Sorry, she didn't destroy the TARDIS this time. She had enough.
She walked
respect for that.
outside.
I liked that.
Yeah, hello. After blowing it up the last few times, maybe you think to not do it inside. Yeah.
And going out to enjoy the last sunrise.
Yeah.
And ending with Tennant's basic, what?
Yeah.
That was my reaction. What? What?
So this is David Tennant's third turn as the doctor, right?
Third?
Mm-hmm. Because there was also Handy Doc. He wasted a regeneration there.
Oh, you're right. Technically, yeah.
But he has been confirmed as he's the 14th.
Yep.
It's not a new. He's a new version of him.
Couldn't they have made him ginger then?
That'd be too much like his character
Totally.
in Good Omens.
And there's that comment about the something is something. What was it?
His teeth. He recognizes the
No,
teeth.
before the teeth.
know
Right,
these
right,
teeth.
right before Jodie regenerates, she's talking about
Accurate.
something how did she say it? It wasn't a daisiest daisy, but it was kind of a callback to
Bloomiest
that
bloom.
line. Yeah, the bloomiest bloom. It was kind of called back to the daisiest daisy line from
Pertwee.
Pertwee. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She
So
gets-
wasn't it a nice one saying tag you're it? I like that.
Yeah. She kind of had her final speech, but it didn't go on and on like the Moffat ones did.
Guacamoles.
10 had a bit of a speech before he rescued
10 had a bit of a final tour.
I liked the final tour of 10.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well,
lightly.
she kind of did too here, but
Yeah.
more of a tour of one because she'd already just seen everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's go for ice cream. let's
That
do
was
this.
neat.
Let's do that.
The ice cream, it was kind of like a one last date thing, wasn't it?
Yes.
Mhm.
Not a bad date, am I?
There was a comment in the chat from one of the audience saying, yeah, we didn't get a kiss, but it would have been nice if they'd at least like held hands for a moment or something during the ice cream scene.
They did technically hold hands for 1 second on the train scene, but I don't think it counts. When Yaz is stumbling, the doctor steadies her and they hold hands but that doesn't count. That's not enough.
By the way, in the train scene, everybody did notice Joe Sims as that one fellow on the train was yet another Broadchurch cast member that
Oh.
got worked into Chibnall's Doctor Who run. And for those that listen on Big Finish, he also played Mark 7 in some of the they call those Dalek Universe audios. So
Another
basically-
thing,
good.
another thing I really appreciate about this episode is how many women, main characters we had. Not
You're
only the
right.
main actors like Kate and Tegan and Ace, but the person in charge of the guards on the train, female.
Mhm,
We had a lot more noticeable people who were women and also people of color in this episode, and it was just a great way to wrap up the season. Instead of having just minor characters always be men all the time, it's like, yeah, we've got some other strong women in here too.
I think it's been a case through much of Chibnall's era. He's really made sure that women had prominence.
How many people of color did we get? Because there's the master, there's Yaz,
Joe
Binder.
Martin, Binder,
Mhm.
yeah. So we had 4 people of color in one scene where we had the master, Binder, Joe Martin, Doctor, and Yaz,
Right.
all in one scene.
Mhm.
I think we could do better.
Oh yeah,
With us.
it's still better than the past.
Yes.
There was a comment in the chat also that Jodie's first story opened with intense scenes on a train. Jodie's last
Right.
story and opens with
Falling
intense
onto
scenes on a train.
Yeah.
Kind of a nice end capping the run.
Yeah. I had not noticed that. Now I think I like the train scene better. Because it seemed to me like, oh, let's make Doctor Who like a Marvel movie. Lots of action, lots and lots of different sets, a little bit here, a little bit there, which isn't necessarily bad, especially for the big finale type episodes. But no, there's thematic resonance. She starts on a train. We see a train again.
We've mentioned some of the various callbacks to classic series and everything else all along the way. I think another one that we haven't talked about is what the Daleks were doing inside that volcano in Bolivia.
Mhm.
That drill looks straight out of Dalek Invasion of Earth.
Speaking of the Daleks and callbacks, I didn't see the entire Capaldi era. There was other weird stuff going on, so I lost halfway through. But wasn't there one Dalek that was actually a rebel Dalek
Yeah,
called
Rusty.
Rusty? Because I thought that would be this Dalek, but she says, "Oh, well, that'd be a first time for a Dalek if they go against the other Daleks." So was she just forgetting him, or because I expected that to be a twist, and then it wasn't.
Well, he was more in the far future, wasn't he?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the idea of, and this has come up a couple times, the idea of Daleks that are starting to question the
Mhm.
Dalek usual line is kind of interesting.
Yeah, the fact that he referenced the Collins.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're basically we're giving short shrift to the Khalids. We're focusing on Dalek purity and
Mhm.
not supporting the Khalids like we were intended. Yeah.
Oh, and one point of horror, though, was imprisoning the Doctor in his travel case.
That was
Mhm.
kind of cool, scary, because she got to be turned into a weeping angel in the flux, and this time she's trapped in a Dalek case. She could have run away, though. She could have run away. There was a moment she could have run, but she didn't.
Of course, there was a moment back in the 60s where he got into a Dalek case
Yeah.
as
And
a
also
as a
Capaldi did
disguise.
too.
All we did too.
Capaldi was in the Devros's case.
All right.
What was
Well,
your
we
favorite-
are.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Say,
Go
what's
ahead.
your favorite part of the episode? One moment you loved.
That'd be a good question, Anand, because we are getting close to the end of time. So what was a high moment for you in this episode?
When the first Doctor appeared. as the Guardians of the Edge, like, and then all the rest of them appeared. That was just my oh moment.
When the master asked the doctor if she liked his garb, I love the garb. You have to dress for the
Dress for the
occasion.
Eric Roberts callback. Yes. Diana, Eleanor.
Let Diana go first. I'm still thinking.
Oh gosh. I think honestly, I really did like the part where, and it's the callback. It's when Ace was calling Tegan, just to see those two together on screen before the doctor, before anything else, before unit. It was just them knowing they had a conversations and were friends and things like that. And if people know me, I'm never the biggest Tegan person either.
Eleanor, high point for you.
I'm trying to pick just one. I liked the fact that Yaz was flying the TARDIS all by herself. That was really cool. But I think the moments that made me smile the most were getting to see Ace and Tegan and Kate doing cool stuff. And it's like, yes, we are over the age of 40. We don't travel with the doctor all the time, and we are still perfectly competent, having adventures. And I really like that. I could see more of that.
I gotta say, for me, it was Ian Chesterton. I just choked up when Ian's there at the support group after all these years. All right. Well, our convention's coming up January 20th. For those that haven't been to Console Room before, we are a hybrid Doctor Who convention. There's stuff in person. There are virtual panels. If you're not able to attend in person, you can still get tickets up on the Minneapolis or MPLS Console Room website. We also do these little events kind of quarterly during the year to keep you interested in things that are going on up on YouTube. Yeah. And then does anybody here have anything they want to promote before we close out tonight?
Well, I'll promote Children of Time, Companions of Doctor Who, which I have essays, songs, short stories about the Doctor's companions up through Graham, Ryan, and Yaz.
Anybody else?
You can find me at my blog, Confessions of a Neo-Whovian, neowhovian.com.
Diana, Eleanor, anything? No?
I mean, I guess at Console Room, if you're there, we have there'll be trivia Saturday night. I think it usually is.
Travel
I'm-
hopefully.
And I'm just going to quickly promote Twin City Model Railroad Museum, where my Lego Club is housed. Night Train season begins next week. If you haven't been to the Model Railroad Museum since the Bandana Square days or since COVID, they've expanded. There's a lot more different kinds of trains running around in there. There's new HO layout, new N-scale layout, and during night train seasons, everything's lit up and the lights are down, and it just looks really beautiful. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Hopefully we'll see some of you or all of you at Console Room in January. Good night.